Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's roundtable discussion. It's great to see you. Maddie, you're joining us from Great Britain, from across
Yeah,
the pond.
yeah, Britain. I don't know if it's so great, but it's,
It's great because your light is there.
mm,
So it's good to see you. And Brian, you are in an internet cafe in Da Nang, Vietnam.
Yeah, Vietnam is awesome.
hmm
Absolutely great place to live.
hmm Good.
Yeah,
Well, and I'm in Austin, Texas. Just happy here in my little part of the world. And funny, Brian and I did a podcast with a woman in Hungary, and she talked about how she saved up for 3 years and then came to America to kind of reset her life. And she was born in Turkey. And she's sort of the reverse of what Brian has done. Now she's left America and lives in Hungary with her husband, but her journey was so similar to Brian's, to just save up money for a couple of years and then head out and see if there's something better. And yeah, so this is a life designed, and we are all working towards being in the driver's seat and sending our life where we want it to go. So, well, today's topic is difficult people, and you both might have want to run across one or two in your time there.
maybe here and there.
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm gonna get this open and then hang on. Okay. I'm gonna cancel share. Let's see if I can do that. And open up the browser so we have it's like, how many times have I done this? And it's like, okay, wait, it's right there. All right. So let's go in here. Okay. And we're gonna share now that it's open. Doo-doo, doo-doo-doo. There it is. Okay. So I'm in
nice.
present mode and we'll pretend we're professional. Ta-da! Okay. Today's roundtable discussion is about difficult people. There's Justin's beautiful graphic, our hero image. Okay, so I did some research, and then I'll share the links for this research in the bottom of the description. So for people that want to go do their own. So there's some general tips in business about dealing with difficult people. The first one was that saying, don't hate the player, hate the game. There are people who will steal your idea. That's what this image is about because they need to get ahead. They have another baby on the way. They're in trouble with their boss and they need a win. And some people play dirty on the job. And sometimes you can just hate the way the game is structured and have compassion for the other players. So that's one tip. Um, Having to confront someone is difficult. The recommendation here is to speak factually about what happened and then the consequences of what happened. For instance, if it's someone that works for you, instead of judging the things or the people as good or bad or disrespectful, instead of overlaying judgment around it, you could say, look, you keep coming into work late, I'm going to let you go. So you've been late 4 days in a row. Day 5 will be your last day. If you can't be here on time. So this is what happened. These are the consequences. We don't have to talk about, the whys and the wherefores. Um, Another recommendation is to deal with the problem early when they're small. So sometimes the first problem is big, but if something is creeping up and becoming more and more of a problem, it's good to get ahead of it and see if the behavior can be corrected. It's funny, in our own perspectives, we think, surely he or she knows that this is a problem, but they may in fact not know until you tell them. And then to firmly draw and manage new boundaries. So that's kind of a work thing. Knowing how to deal with a difficult coworker or manager is an important life skill. Maintaining a positive outlook and learning to manage your reactions in real time. So it's not helpful to fly off the handle or to be threatening or necessarily to be fear-based in how you manage things. And then decline to take on your coworkers or managers' problems. Stay in your lane. I love the phrase where you hear someone describing, something terrible that's happening, and the answer is, that sounds like a you problem. So I don't think I need to be roped into this. I think that's a you problem. And then finally, in terms of dealing with family, You can put yourself in the driver's seat. So if you have to go to Thanksgiving with a family that doesn't like you or that argues a lot or is disruptive, you can choose where to spend your time and your money. You can decide, we're going to be there for 2 hours and then we have another place we have to be. You don't have to be under the control of others. And people are going to people. They are who they are. You can set your expectations accordingly. So you don't have to wish that people were nicer, wish they were open-minded, wish that they were friendly. You can just understand who they are and then interact with that, or decide not to interact with that. And then Be a Wise Frog was a recommendation from one, I think it was Psychology Today article, that story about the frog that gives the scorpion a ride across the water. And the scorpion promises not to sting the frog. And halfway across the water, the scorpion stings the frog. And now they're both going to drown in the river. And the frog says to the scorpion, "Why'd you do that?" And the scorpion says, "I'm a scorpion. It's what I do." So some people are negative and toxic, and that's who they are. So just understand, maybe not interacting with them. No rides across the river for you. So you can be in the driver's seat about that. Okay. Here's our memes, and this is our last slide. Mr. Rogers did not adequately prepare me for the people in my neighborhood. I don't know if you had Mr. Rogers, Maddie, but we sang a song it's for preschoolers about how to get along with people in your neighborhood. I'd like to help you out. Which way did you come in? This one is for Brian. I didn't mean to push all your buttons. I was just looking for the mute. Since when Brian and I are co-working together, have meetings, he's like, "You might put the mute button on so I can get a word in edgewise." Okay. And then lastly, thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge, from Carl Jung. It's easier to just go, "Well, he's a jerk, so I don't care." Okay, and we're done with our slides. So I hope we have some food for thought there. And thanks for going through it. And yes, Brian, if you need me to hit the mute button, I'm happy to do so.
Make him co-host and he can do it himself.
Hey, that's right.
Yeah, right.
There we go. In the future, dangerously, I may make him the co-host. So Brian, you have some thoughts to kick us off.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to deal with difficult people. So let's talk manifestation a little bit, because I like to bring that up.
Really, Brian wants to talk about manifestation?
So if you look at Neville Goddard, he has a story in one of his books where he talks about a woman who had a really difficult relationship with her boss. And the more he asked her about what was going on, she said that before she would go to work, she would think in her head all the ways the conversation can go wrong with the boss at work. And then that would manifest, that would happen. Like they would end up having little squabbles, little petty fights over things going on at work. So he told her, "Okay, why don't you try the opposite? Try imagining conversations going really well with your boss and try feeling that feeling of that as you walk to work or as you drive to work." And things started going a lot better. So a lot of times it's the energy we carry that sort of makes other people show up in a certain way in our lives. I think that's part of the equation. I also think it's really good to develop different conversational skills that can help with dealing with difficult people. So I'll give you an example of here in Vietnam where I was kind of the asshole. And someone else had a really good way of dealing with it. So I've been staying at a little hostel here, and you're always supposed to take your shoes off before you walk into places here. That's very common in many Asian countries, okay? And I forgot to do it. So I was walking in with my flip-flops, and one of the ladies who manages the hostel, all she did was she just started looking at my feet. And she just kept looking. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot. That's a perfect way to handle that. There was no like confrontational conversation. There was no like, tense, awkward moment. It was just with that look, she communicated everything. And so those types of conversational skills can be really, really helpful for handling difficult people as well. And there's hundreds of things like that you can do to communicate. So, for example, like if someone isn't giving you enough space, you could say something like, you could bring up a hobby that they used to love doing that they haven't been doing lately. Hey, remember when you used to go fly kites? Doing that lately. Love that. And then maybe they say, yeah, I think this weekend I'll go. There's sort of other ways to get at things where you don't always have to be confrontational. I think it's important. It's important to be able to be confrontational if you need to be, but sometimes there's other ways to do it without having to go there. And there's a lot of different skills around that, which I think is good. Sometimes you can improve a relationship by actually just being more loving to the person. Sometimes that works. Sometimes if you just appreciate them more, they start treating you better. So that's something, I mean, people can try. Yeah, I think that's good. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I'd love to talk to Maddie about energy work. It was such a great example from Neville, and certainly the people I've referred to you, Brian, to do some Sedona energy work, or to Maddie, they have these seemingly intransigent problems. You know, I have an ex-wife that's torturing me in divorce court. It's her part-time job is to make me miserable, make our kids miserable. Or I have a situation where I just can't see my way out of the box. Like it just doesn't seem possible. And the first thing I go to is, well, there has to be an energy solution. You've tried everything else. You've tried the 3D world. Okay, try this, try this. Those things are not producing enough of a result. So Maddie, do you want to speak to how shifting the energy, and it seems like when you do the energy work, you start with your own energy. So you kind of start with maybe the center of what's going on is right here. It's not out there. But you want to speak to that?
Yeah. Well, as I was contemplating this particular topic before the show, there's not one size fits all for each individual scenario, and I think that might be useful in a moment if we break it down into individual scenarios and give a synopsis of what's appropriate and inappropriate in each individual scenario. But I was going to lead with exactly as Brian has just said, and it ties into what you're asking here as well, energy. And the first thing is responsibility. In any given situation, we have a responsibility. And there's no need for the word energy to become a woo-woo subject matter here. It's literally what you're putting out is what you're getting back, you know? And what you're getting, what you're receiving, you do not have to reciprocate that particular energy backwards. First thing that we must understand is that everybody sees themselves as the winner or the main player in their situation. They see themselves as the good guy. Even if it's quite obvious to everybody else around us that they're not the good guy in the situation, they certainly view themselves as the good guy. And it really comes down to our own moral compass and our own ability to manage our own ego. because even if we are on a righteous path, even if we are developed and we have certain social skills, the ego can still creep in because there is an essence to say, hang on a minute, this person is not right, but they may be right in their own mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to navigate with that awareness
Mm-hmm.
that the
Mm-hmm.
moment that you turn somebody into the bad guy, quite often they will reciprocate that and become the bad guy,
Yeah, and we get this.
because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to defend themselves in their position.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything that Brian was just talking about leans towards that. You know, it's about how do we manage ourselves and manage our own energy. So I think that that's the first thing, is really just to get a check on one's ego, because ego can convince us or that we're right, but the idea of having, again, as Brian mentioned, the idea of having preconceived answers ready, and
Mm-hmm.
this is a telltale sign that the ego is at play here, because um, the ego wants to control everything. It wants to control the situation, and even if you're coming from a righteous point of view, even if you're coming from a peaceful point of view, if
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to prepare your statements,
Mm-hmm.
you are in competition with that other party.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of a competition is there's a winner and a loser. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not what we're trying to achieve at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to achieve with a difficult person is to take
Mm-hmm.
a difficult situation and to make it not difficult.
Yeah.
And if someone is being difficult and you take them head on,
Mm-hmm.
you can bet your dollar that it's going to become more difficult as that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So should we break down some situations, and I will give some scenarios, and each of us can offer
Yeah, I
some
think that'd be
solutions.
great. I have a scenario in mind. I was working with someone in a coaching conversation yesterday, and it was about an awkward social situation. And they're preparing to be in the same wedding party. And there's a lot of pressure for the women to be thin and beautiful for all the photos that will live forever. And so there's competition among the women. And what size are you? And am I going to look good standing next to you? All of that. And this one woman is very thin and very beautiful, but she doesn't think so. And she thinks she needs to lose, 4 more pounds before the wedding. And she has a fun mirror in her vision. She doesn't see her beauty. And so she made an offhand comment to the person I was talking to about, well, this dress is smaller than this one, so this one must be meant for you, meaning my client. And my client said, you're obviously tiny. You're much smaller than me. I think it's meant for you. And the woman was kind of offended because she challenged the funhouse mirror that my client didn't even know was going on there. So the woman is like in this body shame thing that's going on. And this simple, 3 sentence conversation turned awkward. And then she was worried, oh gosh, have we started something that now I'm going to have to deal with as we go through 10 days of wedding stuff? And so it's funny that you said, both of you, to come from a place of love, to come from a place of non-judgment. My recommendation was to just not see her shame, not see her body size or concern, but to be in a place of loving kindness with her. Don't bring it up. Don't even hold it like it's real in the world, and be in a place of loving kindness with her. Don't ask her about it. Don't tell her she looks good. She's got all that tangled up. Just be in a place of loving kindness and let the river move you forward. And so sometimes that's the best blessing you can offer someone, is to not acknowledge something that they're condemning themselves around. Just, I don't see that in you. So do you guys have thoughts about
Yes.
awkward social
Let's
situations?
let's simplify that.
Mhm.
Let's simplify that a lot and take out the actual scenario itself,
Mhm.
and take a zoomed out picture. So what we're talking about here is social situations.
Mhm.
A wedding is a funny one because it's not just a social situation. It can be family members, it can be strangers. It's a complete amalgamation. It's a very difficult one to actually put into a box, that one. But let's say social situations. And now a social situation is something that's not a permanent situation, right?
Mhm.
It's not something that you're going to have to deal with day after day after day, month after month, year after year. It's just a one-off situation that you're going to have to adhere to. So, in those kind of situations, I think the best thing to do is to detach,
Mhm. Mhm.
completely detach. And the moment if somebody says to me, do you think I look big in this? Do you think I look thin in this? Do you think, then I would instantly say it has nothing to do with me. I'm not concerned at all.
Mhm.
I've picked my outfit. It's entirely up to you. I think you're beautiful. I think that
Mhm.
outfit would fit you. I think that one may fit you. It's entirely your choice.
Mhm.
I'm not going to contribute to this, you know? And sometimes that may be perceived as cold. It may be perceived as
Mhm.
dismissive, but in a
Mhm.
way that puts across your point. It puts across where you stand in that situation.
Mhm.
I'm not to be embroiled in this
Mhm.
argument that you
Circumstance.
have going on for
This
absolutely no
difficulty
reason
has
at all.
gotten, my name is not on it. Mhm.
That's right. And so you can, in those particular social situations, in any given social situation, where you're not under pressure to project any type of energy yourself.
Mhm.
You know, there's no pressure at a social situation to be somebody, is there? If it were a job interview or something else, and we'll get to those kind of scenarios. But if it
Mhm.
was something like that, then you are much more responsible for how, excuse me, for how you are perceived or received.
Mhm.
But in those kind of situations, you can just be yourself. And
Mhm.
I think with anybody who's on this kind of journey where if you're trying to if you already have in your awareness the fact that you're trying to navigate your way around difficult situations, then you're obviously somebody who's very aware of their own mind and their own behavior already. And I
Mhm.
think the best thing to do in those situations is really, as Brian said, come from a place of love.
Mhm.
Don't test the waters.
Mhm.
Don't try to project too much, but
Mhm.
stand firm in your own opinions and your own beliefs.
Mhm. Mhm. Brian, do you have some thoughts about awkward social situations?
I don't know about awkward. I would say one thing is if a social situation is really bad, sometimes you just need distance. Like you just gotta distance yourself. Like if there's tons of screaming going on, like in a house or something, you might have to just leave.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you grow up in a family like that,
Mhm.
where they're yelling, screaming, you might have to just like be in the backyard, go
Mhm.
to a friend's house.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just need distance. That's like no one's gonna be reasonable in the situation, so there's nothing to say. You just have to leave.
Mhm.
That's one strategy to be aware of. Another thing is if someone is asking you for favors all the time, like at work or maybe in your relationship, like your girlfriend's always asking you to do things for you, or who knows, a friend or a family member, one strategy you can do is start asking them to do stuff for you. And
Mhm.
then if they're like, oh, I don't have time for that, you can be like, oh, interesting.
This is a one-way street.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like a way to let them know, hey, this isn't mutual. Like, you don't want to do any of this kind of stuff for me,
Mhm.
but you always want me to do this kind of stuff for you.
Mhm.
Again, it's a way to sort of show them that without having to say it.
Mhm.
You definitely can say it and have the confrontation when it's needed, but sometimes it's not needed if you do these other types of strategies.
Mhm.
Um, I have another example. There was an old, the Wayans brothers,
Yeah.
and they used to have like a TV show. I forget what it was called. I saw a clip recently where he's in a restaurant on a date, and the waiter is giving him really bad service. And he's like, don't worry, I know how to handle this. And so the waiter comes back and he just starts complimenting him, like giving him all of these compliments, like, wow, you must be the best waiter in here, you know? You came right back to the table, like you're doing an amazing job. And then his date joins in. And she's like, oh, he must just be doing this as a part-time job while he gets his acting career off. I mean, he looks great. And all of a sudden he's like smiling. He's like combing his hair. All of a sudden he comes back with like free bread. This is on the house.
Mhm.
You know, sometimes that works, not always.
Mhm.
But that's just kind of going off, what I was saying and what we were talking about before.
That's perfect. That's perfect, Brian. Because in a social situation, that is exactly, and there's nothing worse for me than to be around somebody who is oppressing somebody else, especially in that scenario. The first thing I do is say to that person, hey, you realize this person's bringing food to us, right? That gives them a distinct advantage to,
Yeah.
to mess with us.
Literally,
We'll
don't
never
bite
even
the
know
hand
about it.
that's feeding us. That's the hand that's
Exactly.
feeding us.
And it's like Myrna was saying in the wedding situation there, the best thing would just be to be complimentary, to remove yourself, but to be complimentary.
Mhm. I do think that there
Yeah.
are times when we've had there's a coworker that's coming for us, whatever reason.
Let's not go for co-worker just yet. We'll
Oh,
go
okay.
down that line and
Okay.
we'll break these all down because each one is extremely different. You can't
Yeah.
apply the same rules to each situation. They have to be separated.
Well, yeah. Where would you like to go next?
So let's go for work then, shall we? Let's go for work. Then we can break this down into two or three different scenarios as well.
Okay.
So let's say we have a co-worker who is the same par as us. We're not talking about a boss or somebody like that.
A
We're talking
peer.
about another co-worker that
Mhm.
is difficult to work with.
Mhm.
So what do you guys have to say about that?
Okay, so I can jump in. So one of the things that I've done at work when I'm dealing with a difficult situation is I'll do the Sedona method in my head, and this is something that I teach people. I have my own version that I do of it, but
So give us a brief synopsis of it, Brian, so that people
Sure.
understand what you mean.
You can ask yourself a series of questions in your head and use that to release emotions. It's almost like an emotional version of the Socratic method, which was an intellectual line of questioning. This is almost like an emotional line of questioning to kind of go through and release layers of emotions as opposed to going through and releasing layers of like beliefs about different things, which is what Socrates was getting people to do. So just very simply, you can ask yourself, could I release this feeling that I have right now? And with feeling, you say, yes. It's very important that you like embrace the exercise though, and do it with feeling, like really engage with it. The more you really let yourself embrace it, the better it will work. So it's sort of a form of self-hypnosis in that way, but it really works. Like I can create big shifts very quickly, and that's very, very useful in a situation like when you're at work and the situation's really stressful and you need to change your mood like right now because you have to get through your shift. You still got 6 hours to go or whatever, so you need like a quick fix. It's very good for that.
I agree.
Step
one to simplify. Step one, remove charge.
Yeah,
okay? That's step one.
Charge. Well,
that's a great way to put it. And then there's further questions you can ask, but yeah, go ahead.
I have a fun story with a client. Again, he was coming out of a difficult divorce. And sometimes all the bricks fall on your head at the same time. He got separated from his work. His wife is leaving him with the children. And it's like, well, everything is upside down. So as he's paying the last of his money in the world to a lawyer to try to figure this out, he goes and takes the first job available, which is a job he did not belong in, but he had to start showing up for work and earning money. That was it. So he took the first available. He did not belong in that job, not at all, not ever. And they treated him like he didn't belong. He's like, I've never worked in a factory before. I don't know what's expected of me. And they treated him like some sort of stranger that didn't belong. And everything was going wrong. So I said, let's just start with the attitude you bring to work. Come in the door and smile at everyone, like genuinely feel the smile at everyone. They can yell at you, ignore you, grimace at you. All the things you've documented, I believe they're true, but instead, smile at everyone. Smile as you come in the door. Smile as you go get your coffee. By the end of the week, the receptionist nicknamed him Sunshine. Good morning, Sunshine.
There we go.
And he goes, they're calling me Sunshine at work. And there's a dude that goes like this now. A guy who hated him on site. He's giving him like a little salute. Hey, bro, you're here to work. Okay. The guy never said a word to him, but the energy completely changed. Go ahead.
Remove the charge.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in on that real quick? That's exactly what I mean when I say we are actually contributing to manifesting behaviors in others.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all part of a collective consciousness. We're actually not all distinct entities. We're all connected. So the energy I bring, it actually makes other people want to treat me in certain ways. That's a perfect example. And I'll give you another example. Let's say someone comes to me and they say people always like, make fun of them or people always look down on them. I might start out genuinely wanting to help this person, but if they keep complaining about it to me over and over and over and over, eventually I will feel like now I want to mess with you. Like you're making me want to, because like I'm getting annoyed of hearing about this. Do you see what I'm saying? You guys might have felt something similar.
Take responsibility for your part in it.
You're actually manifesting this in me now. Because I'm tired of always hearing you complain about the same thing. Like now I kind of want to do it.
That's developing charge. That's the opposite of what we're trying to achieve.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. Perfect way to say it. Yeah.
And so once you've managed in one of these situations with a coworker, once you've managed to remove charge from yourself, the next thing then is obviously communication, because you don't want to communicate with somebody full of charge. You don't want to go and do exactly what you've just said there, what you were describing there, which is to take that energy to them and to try to manipulate them in that way to make the situation worse. So the first thing is communication. The second thing is communication. And that's where you have to say to the coworker, this is something that I don't agree with, or this particular behavior, but you find your way. It's different with everybody. Some people you can be direct with, some people you have to find a different way to speak, but is to voice your concerns. Then obviously, if it will either have an effect or it will not, or it will have an effect for some time, or it will not, or and you have to. This is where you have to manage the longevity of what you're trying to achieve here. We don't just go running into these situations, say what we've got to say, and expect everybody to just instantly be able to see our thought processes and adhere to them. Now, if the situation persists, obviously this is the point where you have to take it up a level. This is the point where you have to take a manager to one side or somebody to one side and just say, hey, here are my concerns. I don't want to cause any trouble or anything, but here are my concerns. And the manager will either act upon that or they won't. And I think that in these situations with the coworker, can you deal with it? Can you accept it? Can you allow it? Can you just let it be and do your best? Or is it actually really impacting your work and everybody else's work at the same time? If you have a situation like that, then you must take it further. If nothing is done about it, then we go back to that thing. Well, do I really need to be here? Is this the place for me? Is this an environment where I will flourish? And if not, then you have to have a long plan to remove yourself from that situation. And you can apply that to a boss scenario as well, although bosses are a little bit something different. So what about, Myrna, if you're having a situation with somebody who's in a position of authority over you and they become difficult to the point where you see that it is not just personality, there's actually a real problem here?
Yeah, I think one of the things you have to have as an open question in your mind when you approach a boss, and I've been the boss that's been approached, I've approached other people, owners of the company or whatever, is what is the highest and best outcome for both of us? Like, what does a win-win scenario look like? If this is what my desired outcome is, a win-win scenario, then I open this conversation seeking to understand what winning looks like for the boss. What's a win for you? And it could be, I want y'all to shut up and stop arguing and just get my work done. It could be like, take me out of it, just get the project done. Or it could be, I want to put my son-in-law in your job and I'm going to make your life difficult until you leave because I don't want to pay severance or whatever. So we don't know what it is, but we could seek to understand what does winning look like for them. But you have to go into that meeting understanding what winning looks like for you.
So you're saying you have a problem, but you're going with a problem, but you're also offering a solution at the same time, rather
Yeah.
than just presenting a problem. Now, some
Well,
bosses might take that as arrogance.
well, and I think what you could say is, I think this is your goal. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, what does winning look like for you? I want the best outcome for both of us for this company. And we may be aligned in that not note, or we may be so misaligned that, other steps need to be taken. Let's just find out where we are. Let's understand where we are. And so a way to language it is, this doesn't work for me. So it's
Yes.
not, you're wrong, you're doing it wrong, this is stupid, he's a jerk, this doesn't work for me. I'm having a problem with this. And let's see if I can reconcile that with you. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but this what doesn't work for me. And so what are the parameters we could work in so it works for you and me, or maybe there isn't a way to resolve it. But if you come in with, I think we might have a win-win here once we both more fully understand. And this is the part that's not working for me. What's the part that's not working for you? And then there may be no interest in solving it. And now you know that. Now you know, okay, I can try to bloom where I'm planted and come through this storm, these next few rainy days, and come out the other side and see if I should be looking for different work or what's happening. But yeah, I think if you take responsibility about this is what's working for me or not working, and let's see if we can have a win-win solution here. So the boss will see you're taking into consideration the highest and best outcome for the company and for the two of you. Like, let's try to make it work. And then let's see if we can, instead of, I have a complaint and you need to solve this for me, and this is wrong, so you're not doing that. If there's common ground about, let's try to find a win-win solution, and this is my part of it, tell me your part of it, do we have an area to work on, then solutions are much more likely.
Which is why human resources departments are so valuable in business. HR departments, they are the mediators between these types of things. Because we all know what managers and bosses are like. If you go to a manager and you present them a very decent solution to a problem that you're having, most of them will go into ego. Many of them will go straight into ego. How dare you do my job for me? Who do you think you are? This is why HR departments are valuable resources that we should draw upon if we have the opportunity to draw on those.
Great.
So let me add on to what you're saying, Mom. I think one good strategy when you're dealing with someone who has more power than you, when you're dealing with someone who's above you, is figure out what you want and figure out how to present it to them in a way that makes it seem like they're getting what they want. I mean, that might sound manipulative, but that's a good way to deal with people who have more power than you. So you can like phrase it like in a way where it makes it seem like they're getting more of what they want out of the situation. And also, if you can phrase it in a way where you don't make it seem like you're trying to step beyond your role, you make it seem like you're trying to function better within your role.
Yes.
And so you're just like, you think about it and you're like, this is what I need, but how do I say this to my boss in a way where it comes across as, this is what would help you get more from me in my role at this job.
Exactly.
Like, put it in that language.
Exactly.
Then it's going to be music to the boss's ears. Like,
exactly.
Oh, okay. That helps me get more out of you in your role as my employee. But secretly, you're arguing for something that also gives you more of what you want.
Well, and that's a win-win scenario. Yeah, it's actually both.
Yes.
There's a net benefit to the whole enterprise as a result. But yeah, there are different personalities. And sometimes my mom had a saying when someone was rude for no obvious reason. Somebody out in the world, in line, something. The server slams your food down on the table. And my mom would say, first, you don't know who kicked their cat this morning.
Yes.
Like there's a sequence that's unseen by you, that brought them into this situation and how they're feeling. They may have just been told in the kitchen today's their last day. You have no idea what's going on with this person. And so before you assume that they're deliberately being mean to you, first ask yourself, we don't know who kicked their cat today. Like, we don't know what the sequence was. And so if you can offer grace and let it go, it's over. Like, it didn't, we're done. We finished with it. So to have some thought about, they're in some kind of sequence, a timeline that we have no information about, and we don't need to have the information. We're seeing an effect, but we don't know the cause, and we are not necessarily the cause at all.
So I have an interesting work situation that's currently going on. So get your heads around this one, you two, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. So I work in a team, and it's very time specific. So I mean micromanage time. So not that this job has to be done by this particular date. It's the work comes along and it literally you have 3 seconds. Boom. Next one, 3 seconds. Boom. Next one, 3 seconds. Boom. And that is consistent for 10 hours. Okay. It is non-stop. So it's what we call line work. And there is a gentleman that I work with, and he is a very pleasant gentleman. He is a Christian and is very open about his faith, and you can tell that it makes him a better man. He's friendly, he's approachable, he's likable, but he is a lazy mother hubbard. Okay? He will do anything he can to get out of work, even if it's just an extended trip to the toilet, or when we get a break and we manage to run off for 10 minutes and we're each individually, they'll replace the worker with another worker and one can get a 10-minute break. And this break is optional because the management it's not actually on the books. So it's something that's gifted to you by the hierarchy and the local hierarchy there. And so he'll go away and take 20 minutes. And then we had a situation recently where that meant that nobody got this 10-minute break because of this one person took too long. However, he is completely oblivious to this situation. It is just who he is. He's just long. That's the best description I can have for it. You know, just everything about him is just long, and you know, he's social and so forth. And so what do you think about that situation? I mean, I actually said to one of the guys, not the higher up bosses, because it was in my I was hoping that the higher up bosses would observe this for themselves because it's absolutely obvious. And I actually said to one of the lower bosses, this is not going unnoticed. We're all in this together. Okay. He's doing anything he can to avoid work. And his response to me was, well, then be glad that you don't pay him.
Ooh.
That was his response to me.
Right. It's not money out of your pocket. Why am I hearing about this? Yeah.
So what do you have to say about that, you two?
So I have found in coaching as well as my personal life, because I think I've had nearly every problem that can be had. I mean, I think I've worked through most of the possible problems. And at the heart of the problem is the solution. Only every time at the heart of the problem is the solution. So let's look at the heart of this problem. He has a blindness. He's given himself permission to screw over the people he works with because he's a nice guy, because he's not actively trying to harm them, but he's given himself permission to screw over other people and not give them their breaks. And he's blind to it. Now, if he wasn't blind to it, he probably would be a good Christian man who's taking the fair steps to interact fairly. But by giving himself permission for this blindness, he now can allow this laziness. He gives himself this extra margin that nobody else gets, but he doesn't see it because he doesn't want to. So at the heart of the problem is to let him see it. And so one of the ways you might let him see it is to talk to two of the other coworkers. This is like handling things among children at home, where the mom and dad say, settle it among yourselves. You know, I don't want to be involved in it. If she keeps taking your toys, settle it, stop squabbling. And the two other siblings say, okay, we're going to take all of her toys away and hide them in the house so she has no toys for 2 days. And then say, what's it like not to have no toys? Mom, they took our toys, settle it among yourselves. So I think that there's a way you could collectively take the blindness away and say, okay, you get no breaks this week. So we're all going to take our time. We all take 15 minutes. You get nothing for a week. And then we'll see how that feels for you. Then let's reset. But you don't even have to say anything. You go on the break and take all the time. Tomorrow, I go on the break and take all the time. Tomorrow, you go on the break and this guy gets no time at the end of the line and go, hey, I don't think you've had a break this week. And see if the cover has come from his eyes about now that he's had the experience. Remove his permission for the blindness, I guess is what I would say.
Okay. Brian?
So let me add in. So are you trying to get promoted or no?
Am I trying to get promoted? Not particularly.
Okay, so I'll give the less, ethical answer here. So I would say that if you're not trying to get promoted, you can start taking just as long of breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And if like someone gives you crap, you can be just as oblivious as the other guy. Oh, I forgot my watch. And what's funny is if you do that, management might actually be forced to take notice and start enforcing the proper breaks on everyone because you brought it to their attention and they don't care. But the thing is, if they don't care for him, then why should they care for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, you don't care, so I don't know, man. That's another option.
They have a phrase for people that are slow on the job and get away with it. They call it quiet quitting. Like for the next 20 minutes, I'm quitting my job. I don't care what happens to anybody around me, what happens with the job itself, no investment at all. And then in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, now I have a job again. I'm going back to work. So they call it quiet quitting. Mm-hmm.
So my choice of action was to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole environment exploded.
Wow.
There was huge arguments, people virtually having fights.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, almost fist fights, huge amounts of work backing up. All I did was just did the best I possibly could with my work and disconnected.
Yeah.
so you
That's what I did.
detached. You
And
detached.
there's no win-win here. I'm not trying to get the right answer or the wrong answer out of anybody. I just thought it was an interesting scenario.
Yeah.
So should we go to a different type of subject matter?
Yeah, I think we should talk about difficult family.
A perfect one. Now this is
We have about
this is
10 minutes. And so, yeah, let's talk about difficult family. And we all have some. And yeah, how that is. I know, Maddie, I've been doing a ritual as part of my daily meditation to process through some family feelings and be in a place of love and forgiveness and resolution and resolve. And for about 2 months now, and it's working wonders energetically about being okay with this particular family member, about allowing her to be who she is and not feeling, people are going to people. They are who they are. And you can love someone and sometimes not like them very much. And you decide how much time or attention you're involved with that person. But yeah, it's been an interesting challenge and one that this prayer process has really helped me with.
Yes.
Brian, do you have anything you want to say about difficult family? You've had some run-ins.
So I don't have any brothers or sisters, so I can't talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely like difficulties with my dad for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Other members of our extended family for sure. I don't know. Most of the rest of my family I don't really speak to anymore, and I do think that was the correct decision for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I did try to make it work for a while.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain point, though, how many more years am I going to waste trying to make it work?
Yes.
It's almost like you have to cut your losses at a certain point. But family is tough, like when you're growing up as a kid, because you can't escape the situation. If it's a household situation and you don't have anywhere else to live, So you have to deal with them somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Even with extended family, like your parents might make you go see your uncles
Mm-hmm.
or your aunts, and maybe you don't get along with them, but you don't have a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you become an adult, you have a choice. You can choose not to interact or to limit your interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can just say, hey, I'm just going to see you guys on Thanksgiving, Christmas. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a birthday.
Mm-hmm.
You can like choose the level of interaction. You want this much or this much or this much or this much or this much.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose like how close to your inner circle they are. You can have like an inner circle, a circle that's like outside of that, a circle that's outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
a circle that's outside of that, and you can choose which one you want them to be in. But other than that, that's all I really have to say on that.
How about for you, Maddie? Have you dealt with difficult family?
Well, yes, of course. I think I've been the difficult family member many times over and over. So the first thing I would like to say about all of these different scenarios before I go into the family is that if there is abuse, and I'm not talking, this doesn't mean sexual abuse and things like that. Obviously, that is one of the most insidious forms of abuse. But if there is outright abuse in any situation, you must remove yourself from that situation. Even if
You're
it's at
not
work,
tolerating.
you must bring it up with the bosses and you must insist that they act upon it.
Mm-hmm.
And if no action is taken, you must remove yourself from the position. You absolutely should never allow yourself to be in a position of being
Agreed.
abused.
Agreed.
But with my family, so with many people, I hear horror stories, and you'll go into families' homes, and the way they talk to each other is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in these scenarios, often you see that people still love their families. They still love their families. They love
Yeah.
their parents, even when they're the most abusive, insidious people.
Mm-hmm.
And that just goes to show human compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this scenario like you're talking about, you can love someone but not like them.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those scenarios, it's best to limit your amount of contact.
Mm-hmm.
My situation is quite unusual because each one of my family members is difficult in a different way. But
Right.
none of them are abusive,
Mm-hmm.
and none of them are dangerous
Mm-hmm.
in any way,
Mm-hmm.
other than just the normal. You know, we all, when you go back, anybody has traumas, it always goes back to, so what was your childhood like? And then it'll all start to come out, and you know, with those initial imprintations. So I have my issues
Mm-hmm.
like that. But for the longest time, I had my own personal issues that created a difficult situation for everybody around me, including my family.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to me being pretty much estranged from my family, even though, you know, they only live down the road that way,
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I will go months and months and months and months without seeing them, see them for 10 minutes and then go months and months and months again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to go into specifics about their own situations, but
Mm-hmm.
um, over the years, as I've matured, um, there was a blame game going on here. And it's very easy for us to take people, especially like family, because it's so personal, and to blame them and to
Yeah.
say, this is the reason that you're difficult. This is the reason that we don't get along.
Yeah.
And this is what you're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
those that may be true.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's your family. And like, to repeat what I said before, if it's abusive, you must just get away. Why be around people that are going to abuse you, that don't show you any form of love?
Mm-hmm.
But each one of my family members has their own trauma. And there was a lot. My
Mm-hmm.
sister had very heavy drug abuse issues. I myself had alcohol abuse issues. And there were many different issues that were going on
Mm-hmm.
that, traumatized my parents
Mm-hmm.
and us
Mm-hmm.
and each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so each one of us responds to that trauma in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've matured and I've got older, I've started to realize that I can't blame them. I can't blame them any longer
Mm-hmm.
because I was an equal participant in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
There is a tendency for me to say, I really don't call my mother that much.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's watching this in the future, I'm so sorry. But
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't call me either.
Right. The phone works in two directions, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So there was always that teeter-totter between who's in the right, who's in the wrong. But now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, it would be so easy for me to just see them once in a while, to see them, to go to family events, to go once a month and spend an afternoon with them and completely ignore the issues.
Yes.
Just completely ignore,
Yes.
my father's attitude, my
Right.
mother's fear of everything,
Right.
the way my sister speaks. My sister can walk in a room and I can make her angry like that with one word.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
skill I learned
The
over
magic
many,
of
many
family. I know where the
years.
buttons are. I know where they are. Yeah.
And just not do those things.
Hmm.
It's easy to be polite and it's not insincere because, I want a happy life and
Hmm.
they are my family. I won't get another one. And I tell you that when they're on their deathbeds, I'll wish that I'd have done that.
Yeah.
I don't wish to remain estranged for the whole of my life. So that's a long little repertoire there, but that's where I'm at the viewpoint that your family are the only ones that you have,
Hmm.
and you can't expect them all to be able to iron out all of their kinks
No.
overnight. It's
No.
you know,
And
it's
sometimes they never will.
and most people
Sometimes
don't. Most people
Sometimes
don't.
they choose to stay in alcohol or they choose to release their anger all over everybody, and they have no intention of changing that. And so, I think we talk about being in the driver's seat, and that's one of the things about a life designed is that you should get behind the wheel and drive your life. And we can choose who our family is, just like we choose where we work and we choose how we spend our time, we choose how we spend our money. And so you can have a pleasant but more distant relationship with people who are not like-minded with you, but we call them family. And then you can choose family that were not born in your circumstances, but have become like family for you. They are like-minded. They do love and appreciate you. There is a cooperation. And so, some of your family is born to you, some of it is chosen by you. And again, the responsibility to exercise what's best for you. And you can love all of them and then limit the time with the ones that are not very loving back.
I'd like to pose something to Brian
Mhm.
because he's a well-traveled man. So Brian, what about somebody? Let me give you a scenario, and obviously you don't have to speak about this one particular scenario. It can lead to many others. So let's say we have someone maybe like of certain cultures, like in India and other places in Asia, where
Mhm.
the parents very much
Yeah.
dictate to the children who they are, what they can do, what they can't do.
Yes.
So if somebody, and I'm not just going to pick on the Indian subcontinent here. Uh, Even here in the West, we have those kind of situations, and so speak about that. Let's say you have somebody who may be, let's
I
say,
have to
early
step out for a
20s.
second. I'll be right back.
No problem. So like
Go ahead.
early 20s, and they are having issues because they're in the home with the parental home, and the parents are overbearing and impossible to speak to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, the family structure is much more strict in many countries in Asia. So you do have to follow it to a much larger extent. Otherwise, the consequences are going to be heavier on you. Like the family is going to, they're going to bring it down on you a lot harder. So, yeah, in that situation, you have to just manage them however you can. You're not going to be able to just get out from under their thumb like very easily. Maybe as you get much older, as you get married off, you can sort of be like, well, my wife and kids is more my priority now than my parents or my siblings, and they'll have to understand that. But until that point, you just have to manage it. I mean, the best you can. You're not going to be able to, like, you have to kind of manage it in more subtle ways where you're still connected to them. You can't just like leave, but you learn how to speak to them in such a way that they soften on you and they give you more freedom. Like you have to learn how to work with their emotions,
Mhm.
almost like how to push their positive buttons
Mhm.
so that you can still stay connected to them, but they give you more leeway. They're kind of like more like sweet on you. They, like learn how to push their positive buttons to like massage the relationship because you can't just get out of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what I would say.
I think that there are those situations in some of those where it depends what kind of a person you are, right?
Mhm.
It's where
Yeah.
manipulation becomes a positive term.
Mhm.
Where manipulation is this is about my own personal well-being, and
Mhm.
this is a
Yes.
situation that I'm in, and how can I positively manipulate so that I'm given more freedom or that I'm given less stress.
Mhm.
But in those
Yes.
situations, let's say for instance that you're in a religious family and you're homosexual,
Mhm.
Mm.
and there is a whole lifestyle being put upon you that you are not going to be able to adhere to.
Mhm.
And in those situations, I think that's where you do have to say,
Mhm.
sorry, but I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And then and the family are the ones that can hurt us the most. What's that saying that you have, Myrna? Strangers will stab you in the back.
Yeah, no, yeah. Friends will stab you in the back, but family
Right.
stabs you in the front
In the front.
because you give them access to your heart. They're close to you. And so, well, one of the things I wanted to say is Brian and I were talking about the difference in generations. He's coming up as a younger person, and I'm not quite twice as old as him, but almost. So, and then my mom is in her 80s. And so when my mom got married, she could decide to stay home and have children, or she could be a secretary or a teacher or a nurse. Those were the options. That's it.
That
She
was
was
it.
born in 1935. I mean, not even five options. There are four
Mhm.
options. Pick one of those. And so her worldview that has managed her through, and the choices she's made to try to find happiness for herself are not the choices I've made, not the choices I would ever make. But I had 1,000 choices of what I wanted to do, whether or not I wanted to get married, whether or not I wanted to have family, what kind of work I was interested in. So we can assume in a modern day lens what someone who grew up with a completely different historic lens should think, should do, should act like. They have that Native American saying that you shouldn't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their moccasins.
Absolutely.
And so I think about some of the choices my mother has made. She had a very limited range of choices and did the best she could. And I think if you ask yourself the question based on who they were, based on what they knew, based on the options they had available, did they do the best they could? And the answer is almost always yes. Maybe they are caught up in alcoholism, but they did the best they could
Yes.
because they're caught up in this disease and they're not functioning, but they managed to put food in your belly and a roof over your head, and that's all they could manage. So to not put a modern day lens of, you're not using my right pronouns, or I find those words triggering. The people from my mother's generation laugh at those things like, are you kidding me? Do you know what I came up through? Don't
Yes.
come at me with pronouns. So,
That is offensive, and that, there's a right-wing politician here in I'm not going to say that stupid word far right that you hear on whatever the hell that is. As far as I'm concerned, that's all the Nazis walking around that want to burn everybody that isn't
there
right.
we go.
The politicians aren't far right,
Mhm.
but I have no particular interest in politics. But there's a very outspoken woman in the UK called Anne Widdecombe,
Mm.
and she stood up in Parliament and she said nobody has a God-given right or a constitutional right, I can't remember the words that she
Mhm.
said, to not be offended.
Yes,
That is a consequence of life.
yes, yes. You don't get to put
Mm.
bubble wrap on and then point at everyone who said you bumped into my bubble about how I believe the world should be and you should act. Well, I think we've had so many good ideas today about how to deal with difficult people. I know Brian and I try to gather songs, and so I'll mention my two songs. And then
Okay.
Brian, if you mention yours and how people get a hold of you, and then Maddie
Sure, sure.
with how people get a hold of you. Okay, so my two songs. The first one is from Casting Crown, which is a Christian band, I guess, and it's called Broken Together. And so it's acknowledging between, you know, a man and a woman that you have some broken places, I have some broken places. We could decide to be broken together and just work on our stuff, like rather than insisting you be perfect for me or I be perfect for you. So broken together is thought. And then there was another one from Lana Del Rey and Stevie Nicks. They did a joint combo, collab or whatever. And it's called Beautiful People, Beautiful Problems.
Mm,
So, you know, I look back at some things in Brian because we've shared all of his life together as his mom. And looking back, you could see how that problem served him or how that problem served me. That sometimes those catalysts in our life are moving us in the direction of the growth we ultimately want. Even if in the minute it feels like a rainy day and a flat tire, it could be in hindsight that moved us in the direction we wanted to go. So sometimes the problems are beautiful. They take us where we want to be led, even if
absolutely.
it's messy or muddy or involves a flat tire. So, Brian, tell us your song and then how we find you.
Sure, sure. So we're doing difficult people. So I did Linkin Park,
Oh,
Mm,
and it's the song Numb.
yes.
So let's see the lyrics here. So
I have no idea what that is.
And he
Maddie
killed
knows
himself.
it.
He committed suicide. He committed suicide
Yeah,
at the
which is sad. Yeah. I think a lot of the, younger people probably know it, middle-aged people. So it goes, I'm tired of being what you want me to be, uh, feeling so faithless, lost under the surface, don't know what you're expecting of me, but under the pressure of walking in your shoes. And then it says, every step that I take is another mistake to you.
Hmm.
So what I want to talk about with this is this really it gets at it's looking at a negative dynamic that can happen between people where if someone views you in a negative light, like seeing you in a negative light, that actually is a form of reinforcement.
Hmm.
Like if I look at someone in a negative light and I'm just around them all the time and I keep seeing them in a negative light, that's reinforcing that energy on them.
Hmm.
Like the way we see things, it shapes them,
Hmm.
like the observer effect.
Hmm.
If someone's looking at you in a negative way all the time, over and over, you got to get away from that person
Hmm.
unless they change their view of you, which usually doesn't happen because it's a form of energetic reinforcement.
Hmm.
Like, it's interesting. So, when getting back to some manifestation stuff, when Neville Goddard talks about the Bible,
Hmm.
he speaks about it as sort of a manifestation handbook.
Hmm.
And he says, let the sick man say he is healthy.
Hmm.
Let the poor man say he is rich. Because you want to start shifting your energy and not reinforcing the way you see yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because that can become a negative identity.
Hmm.
So you have to switch out of that to create space to grow into something better, bigger,
Hmm.
that you actually want to step into and become. So,
Very good. How do people find you? I noticed a new Instagram handle there.
yeah, I'm going to start trying to grow my Instagram. So I changed the name to Special K Coaching.
Hmm.
So you can find me on Instagram that way or through alifedesigned.org.
Hmm. Oh, very good. And Maddie, how do people get a hold of you? You're on the Alive Designed website too, on the About page.
That's right. And so my final words,
Hmm.
before I do that, are we aren't responsible for the way other people behave and act.
Hmm.
We are responsible for our own actions. We
Hmm.
are responsible for how we respond.
Hmm.
It should always be about sovereignty. This is positive selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not imprinting onto other people,
Mm-hmm.
but it always helps to be lighthearted and to see the joke in life.
Mm-hmm.
When we become too serious, we become jaded.
Mm-hmm.
And so my song is Monty Python, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. So I'll read
I,
one part. For life is quite absurd, and death is the final word. You must always face the curtain with a bow. Forget about your sin. Give the audience a grin. Enjoy it. It's your last chance anyhow.
Nice.
love it.
I
So
love
if you want to get
that.
hold of me, you can go to newera.org.uk. I
Mm-hmm.
primarily work as a psychic healer,
Mm-hmm.
and a coach and many other things in the mind of esoteric ways, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm available for any subject matter at all.
Very good. It's been so delightful to have this conversation with you too. And I hope we've helped people work with difficult people from time to time when they have to. So come and see us at alifedesign.org, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Ciao.
Yes.